How different is your life in a developing country like India as a Netherlands foreigner? Hi, my name is Ivana and I've been living in Bangalore now for almost 3 years. Just recently, I made this video where I compared the quality of life in India with my life previously in the Netherlands. In that video, I explained how different people have different parameters of quality of life, and that the assumption that a lot of people make that my quality of life here in India is lower than in the Netherlands just because it's a developing country is quite wrong. You guys seem to enjoy that video very much, so I thought let's vlog more of my life here in India and show you some other differences in quality of life in India versus the Netherlands. Here is something that I have found to be very different than all my apartments in the Netherlands, and it is that Indian apartments usually have a boiler. So if you want hot water, it will be there, but you need to turn this on for about 15 minutes. Welcome to my bathroom. In the Netherlands, it is very common, obviously also because it's a cold country, to have hot showers everywhere. And in India, that is not common at all. There are plenty of places where actually you may not even find a shower. But I'll get back to that in a minute. Even if you do have a shower, it is not necessarily normal to have hot water. And if you do have hot water, you will have to turn on the boiler first. Only people who are super rich or maybe 5-star hotel properties will have walk-in showers with hot water. Now, India being predominantly a hot country, it's not that big of a deal. Whenever I'm in Kerala, I actually really enjoy cold showers. Whenever I'm in Mumbai, I really actually prefer cold showers because it makes me feel clean more. It's not that big of a deal as it would be in the Netherlands. Now, for instance, last year, I went to Himachal Pradesh where it was fall and it was getting really cold. Over there, I did have an issue having a cold shower. I would prefer not to have a shower than have a cold shower. But over there, it's actually also very common to just have the boilers and have hot showers. Something that I also want to show you. A lot of Indians actually are used to bathing with a bucket and that small bucket thing. There is also one other very important concern why a bucket is almost in every Indian household. There is a huge water distribution problem. So where some areas have great problems with droughts, like for instance Tamil Nadu and even Karnataka sometimes has problems with droughts. Other areas like for instance the East Indian state Assam or the South Indian state Kerala have issues with floods. But maybe I'm generalizing. If you are Indian, let me know down in the comments below. But all the households that I have been in India have a bucket and a small thingy to pour the water over you. Now, something that might be a misconception is the toilet situation in India. Most households in the urban areas will definitely have a toilet, and it is not a squat toilet as some people seem to think. To be very honest, I have only seen squat toilets along the road, never in an actual Indian household. However, I have learned to appreciate and value toilets so much more since living in India. I found the movie Toilet Ek Prem Katha very insightful because even though I grew up in the mountains of Bosnia where my grandmother also didn't have running water and the toilet was a hole in the ground. That's kind of how I grew up as a child. Still moving to the Netherlands and living most of my life with, you know, good plumbing, never issues with water distribution, you kind of start taking that for granted. And I don't mean that in a bad way or like in a poverty porn way. I mean that in a way where the progress that India has made in the past 5 years, ever since I first started traveling here in 2015 and now also almost been living here for 3 years, it's incredible. I am absolutely fascinated by how fast India is going and how fast progress is being made. In the Netherlands, there's a very big complaining culture. It's kind of cool to complain, up to a point where you start complaining about really small things that don't even matter. And just being here and seeing that a lot of things are not common, I think it's also very highly motivating to live in a society that is developing, because you see how grateful people are with the most simple improvements, and that also makes you motivated to do better and to, you know, work harder and not take things for granted that you may have taken for granted living in a very very organized society. Speaking about organization, India is not a country for you if you're a stickler for rules. The Netherlands is a very, very organized country. So if you are a stickler for rules, the Netherlands is your country. There are rules for everything, even the smallest things like getting a dog, for instance. No, you don't need a license to get a dog, but you do need to register your dog. And there are rules that, for instance, your dog needs to have a tag. You have to pay dog taxes, even though when you go outside and your dog, you know, relieves himself, you still have to pick it up. You can get a fine for that. For me, that was always a little bit suffocating because, in my opinion, there are just too many rules, but some people obviously will find that super, super comfortable. So that's just my personal preference. However, in India, sometimes the lack of rules can feel like a huge maze, and it also can take a lot of time to figure out how to do something. Very often, when you want to do an application for something, so for instance, a student application in a college, they will send you a list of certain documents that you need to file. You will file those documents, obviously, because you can read and you understand what a list is, right? But then when you get there, they will tell you like, oh, but we still need this and we still need that. And you'll be like, excuse me, what? Why did you not put that on the list? This is very inefficient. That is something that drove me absolutely mad. I don't think that's necessary. I think that and family values are the reason why Indians are so insanely patient. In the Netherlands, impossible, not happening because of all the rules and regulations. Even if you have a dog that's too loud, somebody can file a complaint and the police can even come to see if your dog is too loud. So that's quite interesting. I find Indians a lot more tolerant with these kind of things, but at the same time, because it is a less regulated country, you also have to, right? So that is a point where I feel my life actually has improved because I am not a stickler for rules. I actually like having more freedom and just using common sense to live with each other in harmony. But I know 100% some of my friends or even family members who would come to India, they would go absolutely mental because they are sticklers for rules, and that is something that works better for them. This is also what I mean with different people or different personalities have different parameters for quality of life. Because for instance, for me, having less rules feels more freeing and respects my autonomy as a human being more, because I like using my common sense in a lot of situations to understand what is and what isn't acceptable. Whereas in the Netherlands, that is kind of decided with you with such a over-regulated country. Right now, for instance, also in the Netherlands, they are speaking about creating legislation to make it mandatory for people to wear face masks. Whereas in India, it's kind of common sense, like, hey, we can protect our elders and people who have less immunity by wearing a face mask, so obviously we're going to do that. And those kind of things definitely also have an impact on your quality of life, I think. By the way, actually half of the Netherlands is dried up sea bottom. Even in Amsterdam, you can find these huge pools where you can see how high the water level actually should be and how you're living under the sea. It's really cool. Quite some time ago, there was a huge flood in the Netherlands, which almost, I think, put 30% of the country underwater, and a lot of people obviously passed away, and a lot of businesses were also damaged, a lot of houses were damaged. So the Netherlands back then took really charge of water management. This resulted in the Netherlands right now actually being the top country in the world for water management. So for instance, if you see that Palm Island in Dubai, that is made by Dutch people. It's really cool. The Netherlands and India have really, really great relationships, and managing water in India is actually also one of the projects that they are working on together. So As a Dutchie, I am quite proud of that. Why is this so hard? So this is one thing you have to know about Indian packaging. They're very difficult to open. Don't even try this. There's no point. The only way you can open them, and still that's quite difficult, is like this. Come on, you got this. Following these videos, actually, I've gotten quite a lot of emails and DMs and personal messages from foreigners who also want to live in India. And my answer to that collectively is, I am so sorry, but I am not a visa agency. The reason why I say that is not to be rude, but because I genuinely don't find myself qualified to give anybody advice on visa requirements. To be fair, I am extremely lucky that the Netherlands and India have such a good relationship, which obviously means that the visa options for foreigners in India will be very different than a country that doesn't have a good relationship with India, right? So please, there's no need to send me such messages. Still struggling. Yay! Anyways, if you want information about that, I would recommend you to go to your Indian visa office in your country. They will be way more qualified to give you that information than I am. Cheers. It is the next day and I'm super excited because I'm trying to make my own curd. I have left it overnight to ferment according to a recipe that you guys gave me in the previous video, because you guys saw that I was buying so many packets of curd, which is yogurt, in case you're a foreigner. Apparently you can make it yourself, so I've been following one of you guys' recipe and let's see how it turned out. It's still quite watery. It's actually a little bit milder than the regular curd that I buy and reminds me a lot of Dutch yogurt. I did not know it's this easy to make curd. I think I need a little bit more practice, maybe 2 or 3 times more. But what? This is so easy. New life hack discovered. This is also something I had never seen outside of India actually. If you want to switch on the power, you have to switch it on here. Some power switches actually also have a light switch, so you can see if they're switched on and off. And I think this is actually great for saving electricity. Instead of just unplugging everything, we have this system where you just switch the button. Because of this whole COVID pandemic mess, I have so much more time to read books and also so much more patience. This book, I just recently discovered it. This lady called Isher Judge Ahluwalia. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She was one of the leading Indian economists, and this is an absolutely fascinating read. If you are interested in the life of an Indian middle-class girl who fought her way to the top, even worked at the IMF, International Monetary Fund, in case you don't know, came to India, definitely influenced Indian politics in the economics department, then can recommend this book. I was actually crying when finishing this book because she just recently passed away, and I was just sad. Even now I'm getting sad because this is a person I would have loved to meet and love to learn more about the history of economy in India. She describes it throughout the book, but I would have just loved to hear it from herself, or maybe just go to a lecture or something. One thing that a lot of people seem to have a lot of questions about is the freedom of speech in India. This is something that especially my Dutch followers tend to question, because freedom of speech is considered as such a great thing in the Netherlands. Now, in case you don't know, I have a master's degree in law, so I'm quite familiar with what the freedom of speech actually means. So what Dutch people have been asking me about my life in India is, how can you live in a country where there is a limited freedom of speech? Now, don't get me wrong, they do understand that freedom of speech in India is constitutional. There is freedom of speech in India. India is the largest democracy in the world. But if you look at the layer of social norms, the freedom of speech in India is definitely limited. However, I believe that that is something for Indians to resolve if they are interested in resolving it. I understand that as a foreigner in India, I don't have the Indian nationality. I don't have voting right. For me, it's not a big issue because, first of all, I have never been very interested in politics even back in the Netherlands. Obviously, I did vote when I was in the Netherlands because I do think that's very important, but I never had a huge interest in politics. And also, while studying law, I actually discovered that I hate political debates. I absolutely hate to have any discussions about religion. As you may have noticed throughout the content of my channel, I am a little bit of a unicorn. I like kindness and I like patience and I like expressing things in a very, very civil way. As I look at the Netherlands, a lot of people take their freedom of speech for granted in a way where they absolutely use and abuse it to say whatever the hell they feel like saying just to get attention. While studying law, we had many discussions about the limitations of freedom of speech, and the ultimate consensus always was your freedom of speech ends at a point where it actually starts inflicting harm on other people's rights. An example that I feel is relevant right now in this situation would be this movement, whatever it was, that a couple of B celebrities started in the Netherlands, which was on Instagram, and they posted a couple of videos with the hashtag "I'm not doing this anymore." What they were basically saying was that the government put COVID rules and regulations on the society without properly explaining why that was the case, which is not the case at all. The Dutch government had explained so many things, explaining why, for instance, it's necessary to wear face masks, but a lot of people feel that apparently that infringes their rights, and they feel that they can just go out there and say like hashtag my freedom of speech, I'm not doing this anymore, hence why I'm not wearing a face mask anymore. And obviously, even though they're B celebrities, they sometimes have quite a lot of followers, where these followers might be motivated to not wear a face mask anymore, for instance, which I think is harming the public health. So that is where I feel your freedom of speech ends, when you are really harming other people's rights by just saying something that you want to be saying and actually abusing it to just get more attention. So if you look at the freedom of speech in India, yes, it's definitely limited by a layer of social norms, not just because I'm a foreigner, but I personally don't have an issue with that because I believe in kindness and I believe in civil communication. So I don't believe in just randomly blurting out stuff and criticizing things that I actually may not have enough knowledge about. Especially if I look at Indian society, how many things I've learned. Like now you also saw I just learned how to make curd. Last year I also only learned that Indians do a puja if they buy a new car. A puja is a religious ceremony where you are blessing something, and in this case, for instance, if you buy a new car, you bless it to prevent any accidents with the car. So even though I have been here in India for almost 3 years, I feel that there are like an infinite amount of topics that I personally don't understand or have not yet learned about Indian culture and Indian society. One of them, for instance, was the history of the Indian economy. And as long as I don't have an understanding of that, regardless of the freedom of speech or not, I am not the type of person who is going to go out there and say like, you should do this, or this is so wrong. Freedom of speech or not, I don't like having harsh opinions, especially about topics that I don't have any knowledge about. That's why, for instance, I also stopped arguing with people in the comments who would make racist remarks about my skin color and me being in India. I stopped arguing with people who are saying that I am only in India to loot the country. I don't believe that that is a way that we should be communicating with each other. So freedom of speech for me, honestly, has always been about kind, respectful, and understanding communication, and never about like, this is my opinion, I know exactly how this works, you should do this and you should not do that. But if you are that type of person, then yeah, the Netherlands is definitely a better country for you because there are a lot of things that you can say in the Netherlands without getting into any trouble. I hope this is not offending Indians because I do know that India has a freedom of speech, but I'm also being honest with you because if you look at the freedom of speech in India, there are just certain social norms that will prevent you from speaking out. Like for instance, if a person is a senior to you, you're not supposed to go completely against them, or that is something that I've learned. If I've learned that wrongly, please correct me down in the comments below. Or if a person is in a higher rank than you, you're not supposed to like go directly against them. You can ask them questions and you can definitely have a civil conversation with them, but freedom of speech, like the way we know it in the Netherlands, that will not work in India. I hope you guys also understand that the point of these videos is definitely not to, you know, start offending Dutch people or start offending Indian people. This country is better than the other, that country is better than the other. I don't believe in that. I believe in a world where we can really learn from each other, but I do also believe in being honest with each other in a civil way. So if these videos are offending somebody, my deepest apologies. That is absolutely not my intention. You are always welcome to correct me and educate me down in the comments below, as long as that is in a kind and civil way with the objective to actually teaching me something instead of just scolding me or using me as your social media punching bag, because that's not what I'm here for. I am very grateful that we live in a world today where I, as a citizen of another country with a nationality of another country, can come to India and obviously under certain rules and regulations am allowed to live here. I consider that a huge privilege, and I hope I never ever take that for granted. In case you haven't noticed, I am fall obsessed. Fun fact, I am trying to grow my own plants. I was never into plants or gardening or anything, even though my parents have like a really nice garden and they love gardening. I also grew up on a farm when I was a child, so I was always surrounded by nature. But if there's one thing I learned also due to this whole pandemic, I am really a city girl, but I do need my greenery. I used to live in Amsterdam where I had 3 parks in my vicinity. When I look at how my life changed in terms of greenery when I shifted to India, it honestly hasn't changed that much, especially because Bangalore is called the Garden City of India. We have so many parks here. Even now, I'm looking out on so much greenery, and the biggest difference that does make me very happy here in India is that there are so many palm trees and coconut trees. It constantly feels like I'm in this beautiful tropical place where no matter what kind of challenges I'm facing, I can really appreciate my daily life. Foreigners especially seem to think that Delhi is India. They see those chaotic images on international news channels, and they see, for instance, the lack of greenery or the pollution. Even though, for instance, even Delhi has quite a lot of beautiful green places and parks, that's not very newsworthy. But regardless of that, Delhi is definitely not India. India is so much bigger. It's almost a continent on its own. So any kind of nature that you want, you can find it in India. The pollution levels that Delhi has and that Delhi is notorious for, that's definitely not the case in the rest of India. Mumbai already has significantly lower levels of pollution than Delhi. Bangalore is even lower. I think Bangalore is almost at a level where it's just normal, like the pollution levels for a city life. Now with the whole pandemic and the lockdown and the coronavirus, all the pollution has come down. So for a lot of foreigners who are questioning, isn't the air very polluted? Aren't you getting constantly sick because of the pollution in India? No, it's actually quite normal. And again, Delhi doesn't equal India. India is so much larger than Delhi. So in terms of like greenery, nature, air quality, I don't feel there is a big difference. I used to live in Amsterdam, which is also a city, which is also polluted. So being here, I think it's kind of equal. And that's what we're going to end this video with. I hope it's also still very clear that the only reason why I'm comparing these countries is because there are so many misconceptions about living in India as a foreigner, and I just want to show that really what you see in international media is very exaggerated, and those are the most extreme cases, whereas life here can be very, very comfortable and nice. By no means would I ever say that one country is better than the other. If you've watched a couple of videos on my channel, you know I'm not that sensationalist type of content creator. I like to bring positivity and understanding into the world. Bashing things is not my jam at all, and I hope that also comes across in these videos. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to put a thumbs up. If you would like to see more of my videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!